Bears. Down, Fields. Incredible move to run for Fields. Oh, turn it on to speed.
Wake up. This is Out High Bear Nation.
What's up, everyone? Good evening and welcome into a very special episode of Out of High Bear Nation right here on the Undefeated Sports Network. As always, I am Andrew Tarbill. To my left is our guy Angelo Ace Camacho, and down below we got our guy Vince Turtle Mucci. The gang's back together to talk about the Bears' big news, boys. How we doing tonight?
Not bad, man. It's been a minute since we've been on. Life happens. We've always said that when life jumps in the way, we're going to take some time off. That's what happened, but now we're back. How are you boys doing?
Doing well, man. Excited. It's an exciting time to be a Chicago Bears fan. Obviously, we'll get into all those details here shortly, but man, I'm pumped with what we've seen thus far out of Ryan Poles and only up from here. So
You would think. I mean, the big splash on Friday, right? Towards the end of the day on Friday, the Bears made a trade to get rid of the number 1 overall pick, moved back to number 9, and picked up some extra draft capital and top 10 wide receiver, top 15.
I mean, I definitely think he's top 15. I think he's been top 15 without a quarterback. So, top 10 is definitely realistic with pairing him up with Justin Fields now. But I mean, I think the big thing is it's exactly what Ryan Poles told everybody, right? Like they asked him, does it make any sense to do this before free agency? And he said, well, sure. I think it makes sense if we're getting a player back. And look at that. Right. They got a player back and he makes the trade before. I mean, it also it helps the Panthers too, right? Because now this goes against the Bears' salary for this year instead of Carolina's. If it was done post-draft, post-free agency, then there's some different salary ramifications. But, I mean, you got the money, so why not? Like, I mean, the dude's on a team. It's not like playing for free, but, when you see some of these contracts that are being signed and Odell Beckham has a workout, he hasn't played in over a year, and they're talking about he wants $20 million a year. I mean, so you get a very, very reasonable deal for 3 years, and he's 25 years old. And now you get him in with Justin as soon as possible. So I like that they didn't wait, and you never know what would have happened if they had waited. Maybe Carolina decides that, oh, you know what, there's plenty of guys we like. We don't need to move to 1. We're already hearing that they're possibly thinking about moving back from number 1 already. So not really sure what's going on in Carolina, but love everything going on with Ryan Poles' regime here in Chicago.
Yeah, before this season, last year we all knew going into the season it was going to be a total teardown, right? They were going to get money off the books, take the hit on the salary cap, get rid of all these big contracts, try to get as much draft capital as you can get. And now with getting rid of those players, you put yourself in position with a little help from the Texans to fall into that number 1 overall spot, right? You fall into that spot, you have your franchise quarterback. And there's so many teams right now that are quarterback needy. You gave yourself every opportunity to make the most out of this offseason simply by getting that first overall pick, simply by getting all that cap off your books for this season. The Bears are set up in a spot right now where going forward, if they're able to get the pieces in this draft, this could really be a franchise-altering draft in terms of if they stay at 9 and pick a player, if they decide, hey, the value for a player at 9 isn't what we want, let's move back a couple picks, get more draft capital for this year, next year, years to come. There's just so many different opportunities for this team going into this the draft.
Absolutely. And before we go into that, I do just want to point out, obviously you said DJ Moore, probably a top 15 receiver, Vince. If you look at the stats, DJ Moore has had 3 1,000 plus yard seasons with what I would consider subpar at best quarterback play. So now you get him in here lined up with Justin Fields, a guy who can throw the deep ball, actually led the league in intermediate zone passing percentage completion last season at 66.7% in that range of 10 to 19 yards, where DJ Moore has excelled throughout his career. And now you've got a true 1, 2, and 3 punch with Chase Claypool moving over to the 2 spot and Darnell Mooney going into the 3, into that slot position. I mean, you saw Darnell Mooney, when healthy, take the lid off of number 1 corners, and now he's going to be playing against that slot, that third option guy. I think this just really speaks volumes to the fact that this Bears organization does have faith in Justin Fields. I think if there were any doubt, there was a lot of the mainstream media. I look at guys like Colin Cowherd in particular, who are saying, oh, his stats are garbage. Bears fans love to give excuses. Well, now you've taken away all of that area.
Right.
You've given him a number 1 option, and who's to say that they don't still pursue the kid from Ohio State? I can't say his last name, so I'm not even going to try. But yes. Who's to say they don't still pursue him at 9? We'll get into that a little bit later, but you've made now in Chicago one of probably the better receiver rooms in the NFC, I would argue, and Cole Kmet and the role that he stepped into last season absolutely adds to that. You consider him in that receiver room conversation. This receiver room in Chicago got a whole lot better by making one move, and we gained future draft capital and as a plus, really. So, I mean, you look at where these Chicago Bears are at, what they're doing. Ryan Poles is doing exactly what he said he was going to do, and making smart moves that are going to benefit this team long term. And you get DJ Moore for 3 years before you even have to restructure a contract or re-sign him. And then at that point, the guy's the same age as Velus Jones right now.
Right.
I mean, the big thing is, he's 25 years old. He just signed a new deal a year ago. So it's not like he's going to be looking for a new deal after a year where he's finishing up his deal, or where he's been on a rookie deal where he's outplayed it. 5 seasons, 5,200 yards. We've talked about the inconsistent quarterback play that he's had. What he does the best, he gets open, he creates separation downfield. And we've seen the best ball Justin throws is the deep ball. Darnell Mooney doesn't have to be that only downfield guy anymore. It takes a lot of pressure off Chase Claypool, where he could just go be Chase Claypool. The big thing is, I think we saw it in Claypool's first year. He's a big downfield, one-on-one guy, go up and fight for the ball, not just go create separation, where that's what DJ Moore and Darnell Mooney do. And then, like you said, you get Cole Kmet. I think the big thing is Ryan Poles in an offseason where you had a lot of cap space. You look at the free agent class this year, or, whatever you want to call it, there's really no number 1 receiver there. The closest thing there is Odell Beckham, and coming off an ACL that he just couldn't quite get healthy enough last year. And, his mindset's kind of been one of those things over his career too. Is that really the type of guy you want to bring in this locker room? So there's no proven number 1 receiver on the free agent list. You're talking about guys like Alan Lazard and Adam Thielen and guys like that they're great complimentary guys, but not a true number 1. You look at the draft, there's really nobody that, screams that Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, those type instant impact guys. The top 3 or 4 guys, they all have question marks about their game. So in an off season where you really have no true number 1 receiver available, Ryan Poles found a way to go get one at 25 years old. yeah, they could have went out and got DeAndre Hopkins, but DeAndre Hopkins is going to be 30. Like,
Right.
DJ Moore's 25 years old. He's proven to be a guy that doesn't complain, just shows up ready to work. You move back to 9, and we'll talk about it later, but I think there's a lot of options there at 9 for them. And you also add a pick next year that really looks like it's going to be somewhere in the top 5 to top 10.
And I think it's important.
Right.
I like that you brought that up, Turtle. I think it's important to not underestimate that second first-round pick next year, right? So let's say Justin doesn't develop the way you hope he does this season, right? Well, now you have 2 number 1 draft picks for this season. You have an additional, or for next season, you have an additional second round in 2025 that you can use, and you compare those with that and potentially move up to get a different quarterback if Justin Fields doesn't pan out this season.
So specifically talking about the details of the trade there, are you guys okay with the 2025 pick being a second rounder, or do you think we should have held out and tried to get another first round?
I think that one really comes down to it was either going to be 9, 61, a 2024 first round pick, and a 2025 first round pick, or it was going to be exactly what they got: 9, 61, the 2024 first, the 2025 second, and DJ Moore. And the difference between that first and second round pick in 2025, go ahead and give me DJ Moore. You're going to get 2 seasons of DJ Moore before you ever even see that draft pick.
Right, exactly.
Right.
I agree. You not only okay. So let's say they got a first round pick for 2025. All right, you still need to address the wide receiver position at this point, right? So now instead of that, you got a second round draft pick, and you fill the need on your team at this exact moment for a wide receiver that can give your quarterback somebody that he can trust to throw to, right? So I think I was kind of hoping that they would go like back to 2, back to 4, right, and gain a little more.
That'd be ideal.
Right, but I think you got more value in this than you would have gotten doing that. I think in terms of getting DJ Moore, that's big, right? Because now you have the number 9 pick, so you can address a completely different need. Then you have 2 second round picks now that you can either decide to, okay, I'm going to take both of those picks, or I'm going to use those and try to move up to get somebody else that I like. So really, there's 3, 4 players that you're adding to your team that should be immediate impact players, as opposed to just, 1 or 2 that you would have got this year without getting DJ Moore.
Yeah, I mean, you get DJ Moore, you get 3 picks in the top 64 picks.
Right.
And that's going to be huge, right? Especially with the glaring needs that this team has. And we'll get into that specifically a little bit later on as to what our thoughts are in the draft. But before we move on from DJ Moore, guys, I do just want to say that I think this significantly changes the trajectory of this Bears team for next season. Having that tried and true number 1 option that can go up for the 50-50 ball, especially in that intermediate to long range, I could see Justin Fields throwing for 3,500 to 4,000 yards next season, and 1,000 to 1,200 of those yards going to DJ Moore easily.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really nice to see that Poles wasn't afraid to. He took his time, right? I know that take your time, but he traded the pick early. But what he did was they went to the combine, right? He talked with all these people. Hey, obviously there's an opportunity for us to move on from Justin, but what kind of offers can we get for this number 1 overall pick? Carolina had players that the Bears could get and utilize now. You give your quarterback something that he was basically begging for last season, right? A guy that can go out there. He's played, like Turtle said, with subpar talent at the quarterback level, and he's been productive. So now you give him a guy like Justin Fields, who, yes, he still has to develop and get a little bit better in the passing game, but you give him a guy that's got an arm that can just unleash the ball for him to go get. And I think I think it puts you in the conversation of that maybe they can hit the wild card if they're lucky, instead of just 7 wins. I think if they can hit on the offensive and defensive line, you're looking at a team that I feel really should be competitive next season. I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl or they're going to go far in the playoffs, but you give this team opportunity to compete for a playoff spot by making these moves.
Yeah, I mean, it changes everything. If you go into the draft with still having to fix the free agency in the draft, still having to fix the wide receiver position, that wide receiver 1 spot. And let's say you don't do it this year. Darnell Mooney's contract comes up, and now you're forced that you have to pay him like a number 1 receiver, even if you don't feel he is. Or you have to make another, like, let's be honest, if you had to give Ryan Poles some truth serum, he probably would rather have not made that Chase Claypool trade. He probably would have rather have the first pick in the second.
Really?
That being said, like, I still do truly believe the same thing he says in the fact that Chase Claypool could still be a huge part of this Bears team and this Bears offense. I still do believe that. But when you're now talking about the first pick in the second round, like, you didn't partway through the year when they made this trade, like, you thought they were going to pick top 10. There's a big difference between 1 and 10. Like, nobody thought the Bears were actually truly going to be picking number 1. But things fell out that way. There's plenty. If you look back, there's plenty of trades that have been made where guys are like, damn, if only we had known that's the pick. Like, you think the Saints love where they're at this year? They're absolutely trash. And then they wind up their first pick. It goes to Philadelphia. Like, nobody knows before the season. So, but to answer the question, like, I just think I agree. I think it changes where this team is at. They can go into free agency not having to worry about a wide receiver. They can go into the draft not having to worry about a wide receiver, being able to take other things, and it gives DJ a chance to get that much more familiar with Justin Fields and the Bears offense. Like, time
is of the essence.
Yeah, and
sure.
I think you hit it right. Like, I think Ryan Poles went to Combine. He looked around. He talked to people. Like, everybody just fell in love with. It almost reminds me of the whole Russell Wilson thing. Everybody fell in love with Russell Wilson and assumed that's what was going to happen. Everybody fell in love with the idea of trading to 2, then trading to 4, getting 2 first-round picks from Houston, getting a first-round pick into DeForest Buckner from Indy. Like, everybody fell in love with that, including myself, because the possibility was actually there. But from what we're hearing now, like, those just never developed into those trades. Right. Houston you were looking at number 2, their second-round pick, a first-round pick next year. Like, none of it was really moving towards both first-round picks. They were never going to do that. Indy's not looking to move Buckner. They're not looking to move Pittman. All those reports that came in, it just never really turned out to be what it looked like it could have been at first. And I think a lot of it is because none of the quarterbacks have really separated themselves. Like, the odds-on favorite is probably Bryce Young, but at this point it might not be. And I think that's the problem.
Could be Anthony Richardson.
Right. And you got guys like Colin Cowherd who are coming out saying, the Bears should move on from Justin or Skip Bayless and stuff.
Get out of here.
Like, dude, the dude had 2 seasons. One that was just completely a shit show with Matt Nagy as his coach. And then the second season, it started rough and you've seen the development. Yeah, he ran a lot, right? But that's because he had to.
Right.
So,
and now you have a true number 1 receiver. So the pressure's off there. If they truly do re-sign David Montgomery like they're saying they want to and solidify this offensive line, this team could take a lot of pressure off Justin in all the right ways to where we could really see that passing game develop into what the 65-plus-year-old narrative guys want to see, the Colin Cowards of the world who, until they see Justin Fields throwing for 350 yards a game, he's not your franchise quarterback. I've said it many times on this network, and I know you guys agree that Justin Fields is the future of this franchise moving forward. This is the prove it year, right? Yep. Year 3 is where it took off for Josh Allen. It's where it took off for Jalen Hurts. And hopefully this is where we're going to see Justin Fields turn that corner and really make stride. And honestly, guys, I just want to say this real quick because for the first time in a long time, the Bears may be the best team in the NFC North once Rodgers signs that contract.
I don't know about
out there with the Jets, because that's going to happen.
I don't know about that. I still think if we're being realistic, I still think that the Lions are going to be a tough team to contend with this year, just because their offense looked really good. Your defense has not looked great. So it really,
They're in the same situation as the Bears,
I think
though.
you're going to see a wholesale different roster next year for the Bears. And I don't know. I just think it was just one of those years for the Lions. Like you look up and down the roster, like I just don't see who on that roster is going to make that offense go every year like they did this past year. Jared Goff has shown you he's not that guy. You know, they're for whatever reason they're phasing DeAndre Swift out of the offense, which I don't understand.
That's
you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's a stud, but nobody on the other side of the field to play with him.
They got Jameson Williams too, but
I mean, we'll see how if he truly takes that step.
Right.
You traded away TJ Hawkinson to an in-division rival. I don't know. I think it's really Minnesota is the team to worry about. I don't think the Lions are going to do what they did last year. Aaron Rodgers, it looks like he's going to go be a Jet.
Honestly, I think he's going to retire.
I honestly don't care at this point. Like,
Aaron Rodgers is not going to retire.
I mean, he's finally gotten to the point in his career. Like, I just don't care. I don't care where he plays. I don't care if he plays for the Packers. Like, he just doesn't scare me anymore, and I just don't care about him anymore. I'm so tired of hearing about him open his stupid mouth and talk about darkness retreats and everything else. And
the dude complains about the media always wanting to talk about him, yet he's doing all these podcasts and all this shit. Giving them shit to talk about.
Right.
And it's funny, man. I think as soon as he leaves, you know what's going to happen?
Packers suck.
That's what's going to happen.
I surely hope so. We're due for it, right?
But think about like he spent his whole career trying to make himself different than Brett Favre. And he's going to follow Brett Favre to the Jets and then where to Minnesota?
No, probably the Lions.
Like, come on.
To the Lions, get out of here.
Sorry, I digress.
Moving forward, though, guys, here, our next topic, tip the scales. Is it more important to hit on draft picks or free agency?
Hold on.
Vince, I want to start
hold on. Before going further, Brent, yes, I really don't care. I could really care less, even if he put up 155 points against the Bears in 2 games last year. I honestly could care less where Aaron Rodgers plays next year. So, yes, I really do not care.
I don't think he's going to play next year.
I just wanted to answer that one question. Mm-hmm. I just really, truly don't even care about him anymore.
So are we going to jump into the draft? Or you want?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Tarbill. You were asking me a question. I rudely interrupted you.
You're good. I want you to lead this one off, Vince, as I know when it comes to free agency, you are kind of our resident guy here, watching players, scouting, and keeping your eye on things. Do you think it's more important with the cap space the Bears have for them to hit on draft picks or free agents, or does it need to be a healthy balance of both?
I mean, I think it has to be a balance of both, but I think everybody's looking at this draft, the draft capital, the high pick, now the much exposure trade that they made, and they're putting a lot of emphasis on this draft, and it is. They need to get the draft right. Ryan Poles needs to show this is why he got the job. But at the same time, like, I think a lot of that's going to be set up by free agency. You know, we talked about it the other day in our chat that we have. Like, they need to control the board. They have by far the most money. They have by far the most momentum as far as teams that people are talking about. You see players around the league talking about Justin Fields. Like, forever it was the Bears don't have a quarterback. The Bears can't get free agents to come there. Like, now the Bears are where teams, like, players want to go. Like, people want to play with Justin Fields.
Right.
And you see them start to make moves. Like, you hear about, the offensive line, the defensive line, why they can't move past 4. I think you can address a lot of that in the free agency before you get to the draft. If you can go out and get yourself a stud defensive end, a stud, interior defensive lineman, a couple really, really big pieces, some offensive line, it really alters what you have to do in the draft. Like, I would love to see them go get a tackle in free agency, whether that's Mike McGlinchey, whether that's Orlando Brown Jr. Everybody's going to have their personal preference. I like Orlando Brown Jr. I think he's more of what they need. He's that pass protecting left tackle. Mike McGlinchey is a very much a run blocking right tackle. So they both fit what the Bears do. If you go get Orlando
Right.
Brown Jr., you probably then see, well, I don't say probably because he left Baltimore, so you will see him be the left tackle. He's not interested in going to right tackle. So you're going to see Braxton Jones move over to right tackle. If they go get Mike McGlinchey, then he's going to start at right tackle because he's not a left tackle. He's a run blocking right tackle. So you're going to see Braxton Jones at left tackle again. I like either move. I understand either move. My personal preference would be Orlando Brown Jr. because of that. Because of him being a little more of a pass protector on that left side. I like that more than I like the run blocking on the right. I hope that they don't go after a center. I really, 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 really like John Michael Schmitz in the draft. I really hope the Bears go get him. I believe they can get him in the second round. One of their picks in the second round. I think he'll still be there. There are different things. The defensive line. The big thing for me was I think the biggest franchise tag this year has been Evan Ingram getting tagged in Jacksonville because I think everyone, including myself, assumed Josh Allen, the defensive end, outside linebacker, because they run a 3-4. But whatever, the edge rusher, Josh Allen, I believe he's like 25 or 26 years old. The kid is a stud, man. Everything that you like at Will Anderson is who Josh Allen already is in the NFL. I didn't think he'd make it to free agency, but you know what they say, you never can say never, and he's made it there. If they want to go with a lesser of because he's going to be awfully expensive, you're going to have to give that man a blank check. If you want to go a little bit less expensive, you can go with a Frank Clark. You can go with Unique Inakwe. There's a lot of guys out there you can bring in on the edge to because you need two. You really don't have anybody that had a great pass rush last year.
Well, no, and that's what really, if you look at that defense, right, that was the weakest spot. You could not get to the quarterback last year, which puts a bigger strain on the secondary for your defense.
Yeah, I mean,
I heard Leonard Floyd's available.
I think we've been waiting for
Khalil Mack will be available too. Why don't we just bring both of them back?
Yeah, we've been waiting for Trevor Gibson to take that next step as a professional edge rusher in the NFL, and I just don't think he's the guy. He's a very good role player, but I don't think he's a starter. So you really need two edges. You probably need two interior defensive linemen. Obviously, Deron Payne got franchised, and now today he signed that big deal, the 4-year, $90 million. But I think a guy like Javon Hargrave makes a lot of sense. There's a couple other guys. And, if you can get one of those, like if you can get a Javon Hargrave and then I don't know if I doubt he's there in the second round, but maybe a guy like Maisie Smith falls to you in the second round. He's a great pass rusher from the inside. Then you only need one, right? Because you're getting one in free agency. I think all those spots, I think you need an offensive lineman. You need an edge rusher and an interior defensive lineman and at least one linebacker all in that first wave of free agency. And I think there's a lot of guys that make sense. You see Bobby I don't know how to pronounce his last name. It's
I think it's like Okorike or something.
Yeah,
like that.
Something like that. He's played under Eberflus. He knows the system. He's a very good player. He stepped in last year when Shaq Leonard was hurt, stepped in very well. He's a guy I think is a seamless transition for the Bears to go in. Makes a lot of sense. There's just guys that make a lot of sense that I think it makes free agency too important to only talk about the draft.
I think if they can hit on some guys in free agency at reasonable prices, it opens you up, like I said again, to, okay, well, we don't really need this person at number 9. So why don't we try to move back, get some extra capital? I think you put yourself in a better position. You see all the teams that are really good are always able to gain more draft capital, right? The Patriots, whether they drafted well or not, they still were always able to get more draft capital, even with having later first round picks, right? I think free agency is important. I think what you don't want to have happen is a situation where Ryan Poles is bidding against everybody and trying to get everything sewed up in free agency. I think something that's really stood out to me personally, is last offseason, he wasn't willing to go out there and just break the bank for anybody. So I'm hoping that the patience with that kind of helps. I'm expecting a couple big names to drop tomorrow, right? Doesn't the legal tampering period start at midnight tonight? into tomorrow or something like that. So, I'm expecting the Bears to be in the conversation tomorrow, right? There's no reason they shouldn't be. They have the money. They should go out there and they should say, okay, we got our wide receiver, and now, boom, we got somebody for the offensive line. Boom, we got a piece for the defensive line. Now you've knocked out 3 key parts for your team before the draft even happens, right? And that opens up so many other doors for you later in free agency, in the draft itself. I think Poles has really shown a lot to me over the last year that he's willing to spend the money smart. And I think that's what we're going to see this free agency period as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to fill all the holes this year.
Right.
Like, you're just not, as much as we'd love them to, they're not. So you're seeing him set the Bears up to be in a position to do this again next year. The first round pick from Carolina, talking about, well, yes, we're going to be aggressive, but we're going to be aggressive on the guys we feel are worth being aggressive on. If there's not a guy there we like, we're not going to spend the money just to spend it. There is a whole nother free agent class next year. So I think you're seeing a lot of the right things, and it's kind of refreshing to have a regime that basically tells you, this is how we're going to go about it. And then they followed up and they do exactly what they said, from the days of we're not going to tell you anything, including when our contracts are up, to here's basically the roadmap that we're using to get to continued success. And you can kind of follow along at home and see where those moves make sense.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The transparency that's came from this new regime has been great. Not only thus far in the offseason here, but all of last season, right? Ryan Poles told you exactly what he was going to do, and he followed up to that plan and executed. He didn't deviate from it. He didn't make Ryan Pace style moves that hurt the team or, hurt the draft capital that the team has moving forward. I like everything that Poles is doing right now. Vince, you keyed in on one player, Orlando Brown Jr. I think he is going to be the first free agent signing that the Bears make. And I think it's going to happen swiftly. It's going to be probably considered somewhat an aggressive move just because the Bears need to address that position. And he's a guy who's going to make an immediate difference in the overall pass blocking scheme for the Bears. And really, that's where this unit struggled the most last year. Sure, Justin held the ball a little bit longer than he should have at times. But overall, I mean, I don't care what PFF says. The Bears' offensive line was not good in pass pro last year. So,
and I think he held the ball so long because he knew he had to figure out a way to make a play. You know what I mean? The team just wasn't going to succeed if he didn't do everything.
I mean, the best way to help a quarterback develop the passing game is to go get a number one receiver, right?
Right.
And now they've done that. They went out and got a true, bona fide, proven number one. Not a guy that you got to wonder, is he really a number one or is he a number two? We know this dude's a number one, and he's 25 years old.
Right.
So we do know for a fact that DJ Moore's a number one. There's no disputing that.
I don't think you can. I mean, 5,200 yards in 5 years, and he's only 25 years old. I just don't see how it can be argued, especially you see the body of work he's put together, not just 1 year, not 2 years, but 5 years worth of football in the NFL with subpar quarterback play. They used to say, and I don't mean to keep comparing, but they used to say DeAndre Hopkins was immune to quarterbacks. It didn't matter how bad his quarterback was, he was going to produce. Right. That's who DJ Moore is. He goes out and, he's not. The thing is, he's 6 feet tall, but he's super physical for 6 feet tall. He's fast and all that, but he's not afraid to put his body against the defender to get open. He's going to get the ball. He's a guy that you can trust. If nothing else, he's not going to let the defender take the ball away.
And this kind of goes back to what I've talked about on previous shows, where it's I personally would rather have 3 guys that are good to above average than one guy that's great and the rest of them are okay. Because then you put too much pressure on the one guy. Your quarterback only goes to the one guy. I think the wide receiver room the Bears have right now is really something that Fields will be able to spread the ball around. And I think it's because DJ Moore will be able to be that physical down the field wide receiver.
And I mean, I think, a lot of that goes into, you see nowadays, we're seeing more and more bona fide lockdown corners coming out every year now. Before it used to be one or two guys around the league that you really was like, oh, he's a matchup problem. There's a good handful of guys now around the NFL that you're like, oh, he's going to minimize what our number one receiver does. He's that good. Well, if you don't have, like A said, if you have three good receivers, you can rely on those other guys. If you have one really, really good receiver and the other two are like, meh, once that guy gets taken away, you have nothing left. So now you have guys you can't double team everybody. And that's isn't that the saying, you can't double team everybody?
Yep.
Well, teams have showed you if we got one guy, it can minimize your one guy, and two guys that could take out a second guy. Well, now we're starting to see the Bears with 3-4 options, a run game, the Justin Fields running the ball. So we're seeing different things that are going to help this offense stay in ahead of defenses that we're going to see every week.
And one thing I really think that move helped with was what Cole Kmet's going to be able to do for this offense, right? Because during the season last year, Fields and him got way more comfortable with each other, and it showed the longer the season went on, right? Fields could throw him the ball. Kmet was catching the ball, holding on to the ball, fighting for those extra yards. I think this offense, you get that offensive line put in place, and I really do see this offense taking a big step next season.
Yeah, I mean, if you get the offensive line in place where Cole Kmet is an addition to the offensive line on certain plays, not somebody you're counting on to be part of the offensive line, it'll really open up that tight end spot.
Oh, absolutely. And just to build on what you guys said there, I think your logic there, Ace, with having three good receivers rather than, the one elite is exactly, I mean, it really speaks to the situation the Bears are in with Darnell Mooney specifically. Darnell Mooney's not a number one. He could be a low-end number two. He's a great player. I love him. He's explosive. He's quick, but I think you are going to see Darnell Mooney thrive in that slot position. And then you've got two big-bodied guys now in Moore and Claypool who can really spread the field evenly. And again, like Vince said, you can't double team everyone. So at the end of the day, someone's going to be open. It's going to help Justin with the distribution of the ball, naturally progressing through those reads, which he did better the second half of the season. And this team's going to score a lot of points next year. Believe it or not, the Bears led the league in scoring for 5 weeks last season. It's wild to think that because the record doesn't reflect it, but when the defense couldn't stop a cold,
after my tweet, Tarbill, I told you, hey, is this the Justin Fields breakout game? And the offense just went nuts after that. So he clearly went on my Twitter and was like, you know what? I got to make sure that Ace.
I can't let Ace down.
That's right. That's exactly what happened.
That is exactly what happened. That's your story, and you are sticking
to it.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and move into our next topic of the night. Draft War Room. What should the Bears prioritize in the draft? I want to start this one off because I have a feeling I know what Vince is going to say. So I am going to shock everybody here and say the Bears go with Peter Skoransky. I don't know how to say his last name at the number 9 pick and get an immediate impact player. But I want to know who you guys are taking at number 9 and why. Vince,
I think if it was me, right, depending on what happens with Jalen Carter, if he's there at 9, I think the Bears should take him at number 9.
It's a no-brainer.
Yes, without a doubt.
As soon as that trade was made, I told everybody around me, I said, they have to identify somebody they're okay going back to 9 to get. I said, and I honestly feel it's Jalen Carter.
Do you think he's going to fall to 9?
He's going to fall. I don't know how far he falls, but he's going to fall. The biggest thing about this draft will be how the top 5 picks go. Yep. Let's assume Carolina holds on to the number 1 pick because it'd be the weirdest thing I've ever seen if they traded all that just to trade out at number 1
right.
and come out basically with a wash. So let's say they stay at 1 and they take a quarterback. Houston's going to follow it up with a quarterback. Arizona's going to go Will Anderson unless they make a trade for a quarterback. But let's say I think they're going to stay. They're going to take Will Anderson. You're going to see the Colts take a quarterback. That gets us to 5. Who's at 5? Is the Raiders at 5?
Yes.
I think so.
Yes, it's the Raiders.
It is the Raiders at 5. Depending if the Raiders don't get a quarterback, they could go quarterback at 5. So if you see 4 quarterbacks go in the top 5, somebody's going to fall. So now these teams have a decision. Do I go with the guy that has all the negative publicity about him right now, or do I go get somebody else? Somebody's going to take an offensive line.
No, number 5 is Seattle.
So number 5 is Seattle.
Okay.
And then it's Detroit.
So Seattle,
Vegas.
they just signed Geno Smith. They're not going to go quarterback. Maybe they make a trade. Maybe they stay pat and they go get an impact player somewhere.
Detroit is a team that I could see taking a shot on him if he's there at 6.
Yeah. It's really all going to come down to teams, how they feel about him. The best thing that happened is it came out before the combine, so he was able to talk to teams.
Right.
Hold on a second, though, because does Detroit not need a quarterback? Is Jared Goff the future of the franchise?
Everybody in the world thinks Detroit needs a quarterback except for Detroit.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I think that's one thing about Dan Campbell that's tough is I think he being a leader is important, right? You want to put your faith behind this guy, but you also need to be able to say, hey, maybe that's not the guy for this
or
team,
maybe it's not the guy for good.
Right. Like you could keep Goff and then draft a quarterback.
Like if you have Jared Goff and you go get, let's say, Anthony Richardson, okay, you bring him in. You don't necessarily have to start Richardson game 1. You have Goff who can start and let the kid come along. I don't see Detroit going quarterback personally. I think they're going to go somewhere defensively, or maybe even off. Maybe they trade back, or maybe they've taken offensive linemen. Like, they took Sewell, who is every bit of the guy they thought he would be, but they do have a lot of holes on that offensive line still.
All right, so I pulled up a mock draft of where everybody kind of stands after the Bears and the Panthers trade. So it has the Panthers taking Stroud at number 1, and then Bryce Young goes 2.
I know I've seen that too. I just don't get the CJ Stroud thing, but at this point,
Stroud is much bigger than Bryce Young. Bryce Young is only 180 pounds and 5'10".
I was saying he's only 5'10". I mean, they're very all up in the air right now. I feel the quarterbacks, but I'm sorry.
But yeah, I've seen Richardson go first in
CBS, and I've seen Levis go first.
Said that, right? So Carolina's 3rd. They take Will Anderson, and then on here they have Indy trading out of the 4th spot with Baltimore, and Baltimore taking Anthony Richardson.
Makes a lot of sense.
And then they have Seattle taking Jalen Carter at number 5.
Yeah,
okay. So do you really think a lot of
balls up in the air with this whole Lamar Jackson thing and what that does to them? I don't see them moving up to get a quarterback because I think it would cost too much. They have too many holes to fill.
Absolutely.
I think you actually more probably see Tyler Huntley start for them than you do see them draft a quarterback, but that's just me personally.
I mean, it makes more sense that way, right?
Do you think that Baltimore ultimately would let Lamar Jackson leave their team?
Yes.
I mean, they don't have I guess they do have a choice, but I mean, I think they told you everything there is to tell you. They would love to have Lamar as a Raven. They would not mind that at all. However, if somebody wants to pay him and give them 2 first-round picks, they might be okay with just letting him walk out the door.
Yep. Because here's the thing, man. Like, as much as people, they're like, oh, well, give him the guaranteed money. I personally don't like the idea of a fully guaranteed contract, especially for the amount of money that he wants.
Ask Minnesota if they could turn back the clock if they had given Kirk Cousins all that money.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, now look
not.
at like
what did you get out of it? You got nothing out of it. The only thing that came from the Kirk Cousins era in Minnesota, which I do believe is coming to an end soon, I do believe the only thing they got out of that era was Justin Jefferson.
Yep. I agree. I mean, Kirk Cousins is average at best. He's a game manager.
And he's played average at best. Like he's never had them where you're like, oh, they might actually be the Super Bowl contender this year.
Right. Nobody would ever describe Kirk Cousins as elite.
So you asked who would we take? I would I like Jackson Smith in Jigba because I think Fields has told you, hey, I want this guy. I feel comfortable with this guy. You look at other teams in the NFL that have gone the route of getting a guy that their quarterback is comfortable with, like Miami, Cincinnati. There's that automatic chemistry, and you've seen quarterbacks be able to take that step with that guy, right? I think giving Fields, and I know they just got DJ Moore, right? But personally, I don't think the Claypool thing is going to be more than next season. So I don't think it's a bad idea for them to go out and get Justin a wide receiver that he's fully comfortable with.
So the only question that I have for everybody that wants this kid at number 9 for the Bears is, do you see that the Bears re-signing Darnell Mooney?
I think it would depend on how much.
Okay, so you have DJ Moore who's getting number 1 receiver money.
Right.
You have Darnell Mooney that's going to get close to wide receiver 1 money.
Right.
You gave up the draft capital for Chase Claypool. You're assuming that this kid, if you take him at 9, he's going to be a stud.
Right.
Like, I know everybody sees this kid and they go, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase.
Well, I was kind of hoping that if they were able to trade back from 9 to like 12, get a couple extra picks, that
makes more sense to me than at 9. At 9, it just doesn't make sense to me. I've heard it all week about people who know a lot more about football than I do say why it makes sense. It just doesn't hit home with me. It doesn't make sense to me to take the kid because you're obviously in your mind, if you're Ryan Poles, DJ Moore is going to be a number 1, top 10, let's say top 10 in the league. Darnell Mooney is going to take steps forward from where he's been, which means he's going to be keep proving that he's a very, very, very good top, 25 receiver in the NFL. You're hoping Claypool turns into at least a wide receiver 3 at that point. Where does he fit in?
Right.
So now you're telling me I'm picking at 9. I can take a guy that at best I'm hoping he fills our wide receiver 3 spot. Or I could take somebody that's going to start for me opening day. So for me,
it's a hard sell.
There's too many guys there that make more sense. I truly feel Jalen Carter is going to fall. If he falls all the way to 9, you never know. Somebody might be thinking the same thing we are and go, the dude's a stud. I'm taking him anyways at 5, 6, 7. I got a gift he fell here. Whether it's an offensive lineman, it's so hard to predict where they're going to go until we see what they do in free agency.
Right.
There's guys there that aren't Will Anderson, but they're damn good edge rushers. There's guys there who aren't Jalen Carter, but they're damn good interior defensive linemen. The one kind of oddball would be offensive linemen. They're going to be in the range for an offensive lineman, but again, what happens in free agency if you get insert offensive lineman here, whether it's Orlando Brown, Mike McGlinchey, whatever. If you get one of those, then you're pretty much saying, okay, we're set at tackle now. Because we've got Braxton Jones, who played great last year, or really good. Maybe not great, but he played really good. You've got whoever you sign. Those are your 2 tackles right there. I'm assuming Tevin Jenkins is your starting right guard when the league starts. So you've got 3 of those 5 spots filled. Is there a guard there that makes sense at 9? Probably not. It's usually a little early for guard unless you're a Quentin Nelson or something like that who's just crazy good. The kid from Northwestern that Tarbill, you talked about, a lot of teams think maybe he's actually a left guard more than he is a tackle. So maybe he's an option.
That's one thing I wanted to highlight with Skransky is the versatility, right? You could use him at either the tackle or guard position, which I think increases his value a little bit, but I do understand your logic that, it might be a little too early for a pure guard to go.
I think 9 just gives you a lot of kind of whatever's on the board or whatever. It gives you room for somebody to jump out at you between now and the draft. Like, don't be surprised if somebody, maybe a linebacker, jumps out at them and becomes a guy they really, really like at 9. Or maybe 9 becomes, if Jalen Carter falls to us at 9, we're going to take him. If he doesn't, we're going to trade back to like 12 to 15.
I could see that being,
and then we're going to reassess at 12 to 15 at who's there,
right? Because there are so many holes on this team, like you were talking about, right?
Right.
So there's not one guy where you're like, okay, you get this guy at 9, that fills the spot. This is the guy that the team needed. Boom, now we're on to the Super Bowl, right?
Right.
I like the picture you just painted there, Turtle, where if Carter's not there at 9, maybe they say, okay, well, the value of the guy we have next up, we could fall back a little bit further, get some more capital, and I guess somebody else.
To expand a little bit without going too far down the other path with it, but I think to expand a little bit, it would be if Carter's not there at 9 or somebody that we had in the top 5 falls. Because in a draft where so many teams at the top are looking for quarterbacks, anything can change so quick. And like you're going to see quarterbacks at 1 and 2. Honestly, you probably see them at 1, 2, and 4.
Right.
So then it becomes, let's say Arizona decides they like, and I'm having a moment, I can't remember his name, but the other edge rusher, the other really, really good edge rusher is not Will Anderson. You guys know what I'm talking about.
I know who you're talking about.
The kid from Texas Tech. Let's say because we've seen that before where teams all of a sudden like somebody else more.
Oh, absolutely.
If they make a surprise, thank you. If they make a surprise move or somebody is identified that they really like Jalen Carter, he fits their team, that's the position they need. So now they skip him and go to their next interior defensive lineman on their board. If somebody in the top 8 goes out of the box and makes a pick that we didn't see happening in the top 8, somebody falls. If it's Jalen Carter or somebody else that falls to the Bears at 9, I think maybe you see the Bears take them. Otherwise, they trade back. And there's just 2 other scenarios that I want to paint for you. One of them I think is very realistic, and one of them I think is very not realistic. The very realistic one, you see 1 and 2 take a quarterback, maybe 4 takes a quarterback. Nobody else takes a quarterback. The Bears come to pick at 9. Anthony Richardson, C.J. Stroud, Will Levis. One of those 3 is there at 9. Somebody says, you know what? I wasn't willing to pay the price to move up to 1 to get a quarterback, but I am willing to pay the price to get up to 9 to get a quarterback. Maybe you see the Bears do that because if you don't pick in the first round, but you add – or you pick late in the first round, but you add more picks, more impact picks, right? Like first and second round picks. You got DJ Moore out of this trade. So if nothing else, if DJ Moore is your pick for the first round, it's a hell of a pick for you. So if you wind yourself, somehow the football god shine on the Bears again this offseason, that there's a quarterback that falls to 9 and somebody just can't pass on them, maybe you see the Bears trade back for that. And then the non-realistic one is at 9, the Bears draft Bijan Robinson out of Texas. You get your franchise running back.
I'd love it.
You get somebody to complement Justin Fields in the passing game. You've already got DJ Moore, so you have addressed an issue, a need. Plus, you then fill another hole. I don't think it's realistic because I just don't see the Bears drafting a running back at 9. I just really don't. But if ever there was a running back to take at 9, I really think Bijan Robinson is that guy. If I'm the Bears, I don't go that way. I think later in the draft, I'd rather see them get Rashawn Johnson, the other running back out of Texas. I think you could get him in about the 5th round, and he really fits what the Bears need just as well. But But yeah, it's
if I had to guess, I would say they probably move forward with Herbert as the number one.
Yeah,
I did read
I
an
would
article
think so
today.
too.
I read an article today that said that they were interested in re-signing Montgomery if the price is right. So I
Correct.
mean, you could still even go that route.
But
I
the price
I don't
isn't
know.
going to be right.
Somebody's going to pay David Montgomery starters money or close to
Absolutely.
starters money, and it just doesn't make sense if you're the Bears to bring him back for that because Khalil Herbert has showed you
Right.
that he can be a starter in this league. And then you get
Right.
another, maybe for me, if I go Khalil Herbert, then I'm probably going to go maybe pay a little more money to a guy like Jamal Williams and bring him in to be the backup to him, to be that power guy. Or maybe
What about Saquon?
So Saquon got franchised, so he's going to stay in
Okay.
New York. That was the big thing for them about getting Daniel Jones done was they didn't have to use the franchise on him, so they were able to use it on Saquon Barkley. I truly believe the Bears were going to be in on Saquon Barkley. I really do, which is the only reason why I say maybe at 9 they like Bijan Robinson, but I just really don't think. I really think it's just going to be a Jalen Carter or somebody at the top falls. We're going that way. Otherwise, we're going to trade back to 12 to 15.
Yeah, I could see
Gotcha.
that.
All right, guys. Let's move into our last segment of the night. But first, we've got a 30-second clip. We will be right back with you guys.
Play to the whistle, man. Let's be great today. Let's be great. Win out 3. 1, 2, 3. Win.
And we are back here on Out of Hibernation, right here live on the Undefeated Sports Network. As always, I am Andrew Tarbill. To my left is Angelo Ace Camacho, and our guy Turtle is down below. So each and every week, we go into the bare bones, what we believe our keys to victory are for the Chicago Bears. However, tonight, obviously, we're in the offseason talking free agency, so we are going to go through our 3 keys to an offseason victory. Number 1, starting with you, Ace, make an impact. How do the Bears make an impact here in free agency or in the offseason in general? Sorry, in your opinion.
So I think it all starts with free agency. I think the Bears need to go in and make up, okay, this is what we're going to spend on this position. This is what we're going to spend on this position. This is what we're going to spend on this position. They need to go in. They need to pay, okay, boom, right off the bat. We want this guy. We're going to pay him this. They have the money to go into this free agency period and get anybody they want, realistically, right? They have
still the most cap space in football, $75 million.
Yep, $75 million. So I mean, you're looking at an opportunity for you to go and say, look at all these guys. I know they still have to make the decision to come to your team, but if you go and say, I want to shore up my offensive line, boom, throw the money at this guy. I really think you come out, you make a statement right away and say, hey, we're not messing around. We are improving this team going into next season.
Yeah, I absolutely wholeheartedly agree. I think we talked about a few guys. Orlando Brown Jr. for me specifically is number 1. And then, there are still some other names that the Bears are going to entertain. Vince alluded to a couple edge rushers that are going to be free agents. So if you play your cards right in free agency, you're going to set yourself up for a successful draft. And that kind of ties into our second point here in being aggressive. Vince, I want your thoughts. How aggressive should the Bears be, and how aggressive is too aggressive for this team?
I mean, I don't know that there's necessarily a too aggressive unless you start to overpay guys that are just average guys. Like if you're going out and getting true difference makers, then I don't really know that there's a too aggressive. Like Ace said, they have the money to go get anybody they want. So, like, for me, I need to see at least, and this isn't only, but at least 3 starters signed in this initial 1 to 2 days of free agency. Like, I'm thinking more like 3 to 5 because there's guys that not only have the Bears identified, but there's guys that we have identified like as guys that fit the Bears because they're that obvious of a fit. So now with that being said, you have the money, go get them. Like if Orlando Brown, I don't need 2 offensive linemen, but I need one. You just have to give me one.
Definitely.
So if you're going to give me one, then you need to get whichever of the 2 you like best. Just figure it out how to go get them. So I don't really think there's a too aggressive. Like you don't want to bet against yourself, but you do want the most money on the table when it comes to that offer. Like if you're coming down to, well, should we go this or maybe a little bit more? Like just always go a little bit more. You have it.
Right.
Don't lose out to a last second offer because you were unwilling to go up just a little bit of money. So
that's definitely going to be the case with Orlando Brown Jr., right? He's going to go to the team that pays him the most. I would think.
From everything he's done in his career, that's what he is shown to be that type of player, which is okay. Like I never hate against anybody that wants to get the most money they can get. Like by all means, go get the money you have coming to you. But like I said, I think it really needs to be 3 to 5 starters and not like, all right, I guess he could be a starter here. He's better than anything we got.
No, you need a tried and true starter.
3 to 5 guys that are starters in this league, like not just because you don't have anybody better, but that are true number ones at that position.
Right.
Very well said. And that kind of ties into point number 3 here in being smart and efficient. Again, aggressiveness, you don't want to just throw all the cards out there, but again, you have the most money in free agency, still by 10 million over the next closest team, even after making the move for DJ Moore. So it's just one of those things that the Bears have to be smart and efficient. As you said, 3 to 5 starters would be ideal. I would really like to see them get a linebacker. I think we need a linebacker, and I don't know that it makes sense, at least early in the draft, to go after a linebacker. I don't know who's available at the position in the free agent market. It doesn't seem like there's been a lot of splash names, at least thus far, regarding the linebacker position for free agency. That's usually a position that's tough and you have to capitalize on through the draft, but Vince, maybe can you tell us who your top 3 linebackers are in the draft?
In the draft, so it all depends on when you're going to be able to get one. Like, I think there's some guys that are going to be available in the third to fourth rounds that could start day one.
Okay.
One of them is, I think his name is Deshaun Overton or Deshaun over something from Texas. He's he's an outside linebacker in a 4-3, so more of an inside linebacker in a 3-4. But in the 4-3, he's going to be like that, kind of drop into coverage type, cover the running backs, cover the tight ends, pass rush here and there, more kind of like that combo linebacker. There is his name is slipping my mind, but he's from Iowa. Jack something from Iowa. Again, like there's really nobody that like is jumping out as like that top end
Campbell.
Pick. Yes, thank you.
Campbell,
that top end pick. But there's guys in the next few rounds after that first round that will be very good linebackers, just aren't that over the top.
Okay, and then in free agency, are there any people, any targets at linebacker you would spend money on?
We had talked about, and Ace, you say his last name. Yes, Okereke.
Okay.
I think he makes the most sense. He knows the system. He's produced in the system. He's produced under Eberflus. He's basically a cheaper version of Roquan Smith.
Okay. See, I guess I thought of him more as an edge rush than traditional linebacker, but either way, I think the Bears definitely need to make some smart moves here, and that goes back to efficiency, right? don't overpay, but don't underpay. Put your cards out there and show that you can pay the money for elite talent, but that you're not going to overpay and settle for someone who's not of that upper echelon. So ultimately, I think we as Bears fans have a lot to be excited about, right? We are moving into this offseason with the most cap space in football, as well as going into the draft with very good positioning. Obviously, a large number of picks compared to previous years, and we even got a comp pick in the 7th round. I know, when you get back that far, you're not usually going to get top tier talent, but this team needs bodies. It needs impact players, but we also need depth, and that's something that's going to be addressed in those later rounds. So I think it's important. Go ahead, Ace.
I was just gonna say, we talked about the linebacker. I watched CHGO when they were in Indy, and JJ Stankovitz was on there, and he was talking about Okereke and how he felt that was a smart decision for the Bears to make. I got Braggs jumping on with me as long as everything falls into place on Wednesday on Sport Court, and I'm excited to talk to him about some of the prospects for the draft, and then maybe get into a little bit of that free agent talk. We'll have some moves that have been made by then.
Absolutely.
And then we'll be able to kind of break those down on Wednesday, which will be nice.
Very cool.
All right, guys. We appreciate everyone's time. As always, thank you for jumping on and viewing Out of Hibernation. You can follow the Undefeated Sports Network on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and coming soon, Spotify. We have a dedicated Facebook group where you can see all the content that the group shares. So please be sure to go like, follow, and subscribe. If you are not currently following the Undefeated Sports Network, every follow helps us gain momentum here in the Chicago sports world. So we appreciate all of you for tuning in. Have a good night, and we will see you guys very soon. Ace will be back Wednesday for Sport Court if everything lines up, and more content to come. So appreciate you guys, and have a good night.